Hello and welcome to TVRI World, the official host broadcaster for G20. Airing live from our studio in Jakarta, I am Aisyah Fabian and we will also be reporting live from Nusa Dua, Bali, where we have our Rahmat Idris and we'll bring you the latest updates from the third Fmcbg meeting today. The Fmcbg meeting, this is the third one and has begun yesterday, opened by the Minister of Finance of Indonesia, Sri Mulyani, yesterday, and with all the agenda. And now we are going to connect with Rahmat Idris from Nusa Dua, Bali.
Hello, good morning, Aisha. Yeah, day two of the third finance ministers and central bank governors meeting of the G20 here in Nusa Dua, Bali has begun indeed. There's going to be a lot to expect today since this is the final day, meaning that we can expect later on in the day what these finance ministers and governors can come up with in terms of finding solutions to the world problems. And it's always something to look forward when it comes to deliverables and communiques at the end of each meeting, as we did also expect during the first meeting in Jakarta and also the second in Washington, D.C. So that's something to look forward at the end of the day later on today as the final day. And if we look back in retrospect on yesterday as the first day of the third finance ministers and central bank governors meeting here in Nusa Dua, Bali, Indonesia, there have been a lot of discussions on different aspects, financial aspects, and also ways to address all the world issues. The day began yesterday with the opening remarks by the finance minister of the Republic of Indonesia, Sri Mulyani, who began her remarks by expressing her condolences to the tragic passing of the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. She mentioned how Shinzo had such an amazing leadership. Indonesia and Japan had always been in such great relationships, and the tragic passing of Shinzo Abe will leave such a great, humongous legacy even to the next generation. So he will be missed. He will be missed greatly. And also during the opening remarks yesterday, Minister of Finance Sri Mulyani also touched on how she urged all the world leaders, all the nations, particularly within the G20, all of these big economies, to come together to address world issues. In particular is the food and energy security, which is heavily on the table on many deliberations of the G20 across the year. And to touch on how the world food issues has been exacerbated by the ongoing geopolitical tensions and also the war in Ukraine. And she urged all members of the nations to also participate in efforts to amp up food productivity across the globe and to open up channels and distributions of grains and wheat, particularly to countries who are currently suffering the most from hunger. She also elaborated on the fact, the data from WTO, World Trade Organizations of the United Nations, saying that currently in 2022, there are 279 million people across the globe who are living in poverty and in hunger. And that number alone has doubled if we compare in 2019, where the number stood at only 130 something million, meaning that in the span of a little over 2 years during the time of the pandemic, the number of people living in hunger has doubled to 279 million people. And also, the Minister of Finance of Indonesia, Sri Mulyani, touched also on the climate change. She says a concerted global effort of all nations across the globe, not only within the G20, but also outside, to reduce gas house emissions, to reduce carbon emissions. Indonesia itself is planning to retire coal by 2030, and that is a huge undertaking, meaning that in 2030, the production of coal will be stopped, the use of coal for energy will be stopped, while about 80% of electricity in the country is produced by coal, meaning that the country needs to find immediately reliable source of renewable energy and building renewable energy plants across the nations to replace the use of coal. And adding to that discussions on climate change was also words from Nirmala Sitaraman, I should say, and she is the finance minister of India, who also spoke at one of the sessions yesterday, particularly notably on the high-level discussions on collective effort to amp up ways to address food insecurity. As you mentioned that she urged World Trade Organizations to open up channels of distributions of grains to countries who are in need desperately of these grains, of these foods. And she also commended the efforts of the global communities to help each other, particularly with the efforts led by the United Nations, an initiative that has been signed by over 100 countries where they have made an agreement to boost up food productions within their framework of food productivity, food chains, supplies, and so on to address these issues of food and energy crisis. And also, another notable key remarks yesterday was from the finance ministers of the U.S., Janet Yellen. She actually touched on the inefficiency of the subsidy of food during the time of the pandemic. She said that there should be a better mechanism to do a food supply during the time of the pandemic, particularly using the technology of digitalizations, which would make it easier, more transparent, and reducing the possibility of corruptions. And she also conveyed on the fact that the U.S. has made funds available of 1.8 billion US dollars for food security in the US, and adding to that is 500 billion US dollars to support industries, to support livelihoods that work within the regions of food securities. And also the US is currently establishing food emergency developments in Africa to address these issues. Excellency, Finance Minister of the U.S., Janet Yellen, also took her time to express her appreciation to Sri Mulyani, our very own Minister of Finance, saying that she truly appreciated, commended the effort of Sri Mulyani to put all of these finance ministers together within the G20 and to discuss, to address world issues. And that is an achievement of its own. And also congratulated Indonesia for a very successful G20 presidency. And we'll look forward today, as the agenda on the table is one of the key issues for the finance track, which is the digital currency as a part of financial inclusion, and rather digital finance as a part of the financial inclusion. So we'll see how the deliberations on that topic will unfold the entire day today in Nusa Dua, Bali, Indonesia. In the meantime, I'm Rahmat Idris. Let's head back to you in Jakarta. Aisyah.
Thank you very much, Rahmat Idris, for the live report. From Nusa Dua, Bali, where is happening right now the second day of the finance minister and bank governors meeting, that also mentioned by Rahmat Idris that this is the second day and also the last day, with agenda addressing food issues, also climate change issues, where the countries will be discuss about how to reduce carbon emission in order to act on climate change issue. And also on today's agenda, they will be discussing the digital currency. And now we have more updates from the G20. Among the series of the third Fmcbg side events, participants discuss issues over cross-border payment, talking about faster, cheaper, more transparent, and more inclusive cross-border in industry response to cross-border payment initiatives, among others. With key speakers, Peri Waryono, Governor of Bank Indonesia, and John Cunliffe, Chair of Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructures, and also co-chair of FSB Cross-Border Payments Coordination Group.
Central Bank Governors meeting talks on cross-border payment, among several other issues. Cross-border payment in the digital era is one of the 6 priority agendas in the financial track under the Indonesian G20 presidency. To accelerate the interconnectivity of cross-border payment, synergy between ASEAN Central Bank, including usage of QR code, retail fast payment, standardized API activated by liquidity provider or LCS and LCBSA is required. Collaboration is a significantly important pillar in the ASEAN Payment Connectivity Initiative, which is boosting for the economic recovery and financial integration in the region via heightened efficiency, cost-cutting, and elevation of user experience for cross-border payment. Speakers in the Leaders' Insight for Cross-Border Payments are Peri Warjio, Governor of Bank Indonesia, and John Cunliffe, Chair of the Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructures, or CPMI, and Co-Chair of FSB Cross-Border Payment Coordination Group.
The Minister of Finance, Sri Mulyani, called for the Ministers of Finance to be aware and work to tackle climate change. Indonesia has also made historic breakthrough via the implementation of energy transition mechanism.
Minister of Finance Sri Mulyani explained that in order to achieve goal in handling climate change, there must be collective participation from all stakeholders. Minister Sri Mulyani, along with several other finance ministers, namely the Finance Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, Minister of Finance of South Africa, Enoch Godongwana, and Deputy Minister of Finance for International Affairs of the United States of America, Andy Baukol, talked regarding energy transition toward green transition in the meeting of financing for climate change in Nusa Dua, Bali. Minister Sri Mulyani said that the Indonesian presidency called for all member states to come together and achieve the goal through climate funding and via concrete actions. At present, Indonesia is conducting Energy Transition Mechanism, or ETM, which is a mixed funding structure to accelerate stoppage of coal-powered electricity and open clean energy investment.
And in the series of sidelines before opening of Fmcbg Bali, the joint G20 OECD Corporate Governance Forum was held earlier at the Bali Convention Center. With Minister Sri Mulyani delivered opening speech along with Matthias Cormann, the Secretary General of the OECD, and Shunichi Suzuki, Minister of Finance of Japan.
The G20 OECD Corporate Governance Forum provided a platform for discussions among G20, OECD and Financial Stability Board members on the ongoing review of the G20 OECD Principles of Corporate Governance. It will build upon the work already undertaken on the review since it launched in November 2021 and will inform the next steps to the process. Speakers included Indonesia's Finance Minister, Japan's Finance Minister, and the OECD Secretary General.
Along with the adaptation of the new normal condition due to the pandemic, economic activity and human mobility began to gradually recover. This needs to be shared concern that amid the challenges of facing the threat of the COVID-19, which is not yet ended, the economy is slowly to recover and entering a recovery phase and hopefully also establishing a new normal.
The G20 OECD Principles of Corporate Governance are the international standard for corporate governance The principles help policymakers evaluate and improve the legal, regulatory, and institutional framework for corporate governance. The G20 OECD principles aims to strengthen them by adapting relevant elements to the post-COVID-19 environment, taking into account structural effects of the crisis on capital markets and corporate governance practices, as well as pre-existing trends. The revised principles will aim to make the business sector more dynamic and resilient to future shocks, including by improving the management of environmental, social and governance or ESG objectives and risks, and to improve companies' access to finance from capital market.
"11 jurisdictions, including Indonesia, have signed the Bali Declaration related with Asia Initiative on the sidelines of meeting of the Fmcbg in Nusa Dua, Bali yesterday.
Indonesian Minister of Finance Sri Mulyani Indrawati said the signed declaration will give stern political base to support the success of Asia Initiative. At the press statement of Asia Initiative ministerial meeting and signing declaration yesterday, she went on to explain that the Bali Declaration gave political momentum for Asia Initiative in fighting tax evasion and illegal flow of cash. According to Minister Sri Mulyani, Asia Initiative holds important role to accelerate tax transparency and taxation information exchange between jurisdictions. Other than that, countries joined in the initiative have also stated commitment to strengthen and follow through with tax information exchange and meeting the standard of tax transparency. Initial Asia Initiative was held last February, led by Surya Utomo, Director General of Taxation. In the short term, tax transparency facilitated by Asia Initiative holds important role in optimizing national income and build sustainable recovery, also from the brunt from the COVID-19 pandemic. And in the long term, the Asia Initiative will play a role in the effort to battle tax evasion and the unacceptable tax practices. The 11 jurisdictions ratifying the Bali Declaration are Thailand, India, Singapore, Indonesia, Brunei Darussalam, South Korea, Malaysia, Maldives, Asia Development Bank or ADB, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development or OECD, and the World Bank.
The third meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors is officially opened in Bali, with 3 themes to be discussed, namely health, digitalization and green economy, finance and inclusivity.
Bank Indonesia Governor Peri Warjio said that Indonesia deemed the Fmcbg as significantly important, especially since this is held after 20 years of Indonesia's last presidency for the G20. Bank Indonesia Governor said that the forum will discuss 3 main themes, namely health, digitalization and green economy, finance and inclusivity. Meanwhile, Minister of Finance Sri Mulyani Indrawati explained that the third Fmcbg meeting is an effort to build G20 member countries' intergovernmental and inter-central bank collaboration and association with industrial peers. Also, it is reported that Minister of Finance of Russia and Minister of Finance of Ukraine attended the meeting virtually.
Among the sidelines after the official opening of the Fmcbg Bali at Nusa Dua Convention Center is the seminar on scaling up green finance in Indonesia.
Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia, Yuda Agung, gave his leaders insights at the seminar. Chair of B20 Indonesia, Coordinator Deputy Chair for Maritime, Investment and International Relations Affairs of Kadin Indonesia, Sinta W. Kamdani, gave her opening speech. Meanwhile, of four speakers in the seminar, Chair of Periklindo, or Associations of Electric Vehicles in Indonesia, and Chief of Staff of Presidency, Muldoko, spoke about opportunities in low-carbon industry. Electric vehicles promote healthy and green environment, hence the relation to green economy. However, Muldoko explained that development and distributions of electric vehicles as cars is still faced with challenges, namely lack of supporting infrastructure for the electric vehicles, funding and awareness of the people. He is expecting that through this forum there can be found solutions to counter the challenges in developing the sustainable electric vehicles and creates a low-carbon industry for the future of Indonesia.
And one day prior to the opening of the finance ministers and central bank governors meeting, press conferences for dialogues, also media activities are continuing over at the Media Center, prepared by the organizer.
The Media Center is located at the third floor of Bali Nusa Dua Convention Center 1. At the location, the organizer has prepared everything required to support the work of the journalists covering the events. The Media Center is supported by high-speed Wi-Fi connectivity, updated information on all the side events, and healthy and delectable meals. There are also giant screens broadcasting directly each discussions and press conferences.
Now is happening in Nusa Dua, Bali, the third meeting of the finance minister and central bank governors meeting. And with all the agendas for the whole event, like the global health issues, international finance architecture, financial sector issues, and sustainable finance. Whereas today's agenda that will be highlighted, one of them is about the digital finance. The opening day remarks, day 2 for the Fmcbg meeting on July 16th, whereas today is also the last day. They have the agenda for today, and the meetings will be held hybridly in Nusa Dua, Bali, and also some of the delegates will be joined online. Now, as you can see on the screen, this is the live situation from G20 Fmcbg meeting day 2 in Nusa Dua, Bali. This third Fmcbg meeting is attended by the largest number of delegation of Indonesia's G20 presidency, with 407 foreign delegations attending in person and another 120 virtually. And in addition, 7 finance ministers and also 10 central bank governors are also attending in person. In Nusa Dua, Bali, as we can see on the screen, reporting live, TVRI World as the official broadcaster host for G20 Indonesia's presidency. The Minister of Finance and Governor of Bank Indonesia are hosting the meeting. And today's agenda, they will be talking about digital currency and financial sector issues. The G20 is discussing policy normalization strategies, ways of mitigate the scaring effect in the financial sectors. Efforts to strengthen the global financial sector through risk management, technology optimization, and digitalization, as well as the regulation of cross-border payments. In addition, the G20 is increasing efforts to promote financial inclusion among vulnerable groups through digitalization. The cross-border payment in the digital era is one of the 6 priority agenda in the financial track under the Indonesian G20 presidency. It is to accelerate the interconnectivity of cross-border payments, synergy between ASEAN Central Bank, including usage of QR code, retail fast payment, standardized API activated by the liquidity provider, LCSND, and also LCBSA is required. As we can see on the visual on the screen, this is Peri Warjio, Governor of Bank Indonesia. Speaking about today's agenda for the 3rd meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors meeting that takes place in Nusa Dua, Bali, while we are waiting for the opening remarks for day 2 and also the last day of Fmcbg Bali. One of the agenda will be discussing the collaboration that is significantly important pillar in the ASEAN Payment Connectivity Initiative, which is boosting for the economy recovery and financial integration in the region via heightened efficiency, cost cutting, and elevation of user experience for cross-border payments. They also discussed yesterday about climate change and how to reduce carbon emission. Nevertheless, one of the most concerned issue in the world today is the economy issue on food issues. Indonesia's G20 presidency continues to evoke the spirit of multilateralism at the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting by facilitating and providing full support for the main G20 agenda. Indonesia's G20 presidency also strives to achieve concrete outcomes with a direct impact on the global economy recovery process as we recover together, recover stronger. This finance ministers and central bank governors meeting, which takes place in Nusa Dua, Bali, is the third side event after the second one was held in Jakarta and the second one was held in Washington, D.C. As we see on the visual before, that the opening remarks for the second day of Fmcbg meeting in Bali, where it is also the last day. And that wraps this morning updates from G20, the third FMCBG meeting in Nusa Dua, Bali. We will have more updates for you and live reporting from Nusa Dua, Bali. So stay with us, TVRI World, the official host broadcaster for G20 Indonesia's presidency. I am Aisyah Fabian. Thank you for watching.